Okay, so hi guys. My name is Helena, and let's get started. I had a dream when I was very little. I wanted to be a superwoman, but not like any cartoons or movies, not in the possession of magical powers or wings which could transport me up to the blue sky, or a too close fitting costume, or a fantastic arsenal of weapons. Instead, I wanted to be a real superhero, a savior, someone who could save people from misfortune, poverty, and disease, someone who could instill hope. I did not have wings in my mind for my blue sky hero. She would actually be very down to earth. 5 years ago, when I was 9, I was told that the world is a wonderful place, full of happiness and love, where everyone is treated equally. Well, misfortune, poverty, and disease were just exceptions in this perfect world. But as I got older, I realized that I had been misled, and the wool had been pulled over my eyes. And as I grew and my mind matured, I thought my dream as being a superhero had become into a ridiculous joke. But that same year, as I was taking a walk after dinner one day with my mom, I saw a person who I could never forget. His clothes were tattered and faded, like they had been found in a trash can, and the beard on his face had grown ragged. His fingers were rough, and his nails were long, as if they had never been trimmed. As I approached, I saw that his skin was covered with scars, as if he had been through countless hardships and torture. And his stench was so unbearable that I wanted to steer clear of him, and I felt guilty for feeling this. Cautiously, though, I decided to speak to him. His voice was hoarse and tainted with sadness. He sounded like that he was ready to throw in a towel. I got some of his stories from his words. He had contracted AIDS the year before, and he was homeless. He could not afford to treat his illness, so he had decided to leave it to fate. For all he knew, he may have only weeks or days left to live. A series of questions soon rushed into my head. Why had he been so unlucky? What can I do for him in this world, which I had been raised to believe was so perfect? He was poor, homeless, sick, and waiting for death. This was totally the opposite of what happens in the novels, movies, or cartoons. There was no happy ending. Fate held the key. It was arbitrary. And death could only come as a merciful release to him. I was speechless because I knew that I could do nothing. I felt helpless. I was no superhero. So I, who had never been religious or superstitious, really began to pray for him silently as he walked away. So, in the face of this reality, my dream was indeed turning into a joke. My world had become dim and dark. But as the blue sky superhero, I instinctively realized that it was my duty to shatter this illusion of darkness and try to make a difference. So I started doing some research, and I have found something interesting. I have found that human suffering can be solved by new technology. Even AIDS can be better treated now, and patients can live longer. Living to 80 or 90 years old is no longer a dream. They can have their families. They can live relatively normal lives. I discovered that science is a series of truths. As the technology evolves, one truth gets replaced by another. This is a framework for life and the basis of hope. I had found hope. Renowned astrophysicist Neil deGrasse Tyson believes that we are all subject to three truths: personal, political, and objective. Consider a personal truth as a subjective one, your religion, for example, or views on certain current affairs, then view objective truth as an irrefutable fact, like how we rely on water or oxygen to survive. Then consider the political truth, the moral and immoral. In short, what society had been decided to be true. Time has flown by, and I am now 14 years old. And as a teenager, with their own developing ideas about the world and an eagerness to experiment, I have been exposed to truth at school that are largely objective, whilst developing my own set of personal truths. But I was finding that political truths are increasingly obstructive. For example, I have always been told to avoid homeless people on the street. Our teachers taught us not to say even a word to a stranger in need of help and not to trust them. Our elders warned us to stay away from them. They're strange, they said. Their hearts are polluted, just like their shabby clothes. Their minds corrupted. They said they would rather save a stray dog than a homeless person. Well, at first, I would not believe it. My experience 5 years ago made me think that we have to reconsider our old prejudices. And this one, in particular, was conflicting with my own personal truth. Our elders warned us to stay away from them because they believed them to be a corrupting influence on teenagers and young adults. But this smoke screen hides the real reason why people ignore the homeless. We ignore them because we're scared. Scared because the personal and political chains binding us are stifling any attempt at seeing them from a fresh perspective. Well, one afternoon, on the way to school, at the subway gate, I came across an old woman who was selling knitting bracelets she had made. My route passed by the subway gate every morning, and I have noticed that this old woman ventured out very early every day to sell her handmade bracelet. Unfortunately, few customers had stopped to buy any of her bracelets in this particular day. And as I had nothing better to do, I purchased a string of bracelets for 5 RMB. I gave her a 10 RMB note, and she gave me back a 5 RMB change. But as I was about to leave, a beggar approached me. He was much younger than that old woman and looked relatively healthy. He just shook the paper cup in his hand and asked me for some money. I didn't hesitate to hand over the 5 RMB change. Then I saw the old woman flash her sad eyes in my direction and realized she struggled to make a living by selling bracelets, but only earned, on average, 12 RMB a day. The beggar, on the other hand, who was young enough to be her son, did not have to do anything. I saw so many things in that look: grievance, injustice, disappointment, and sadness. And there was an objective truth to this I could not ignore. Just a few days ago, I went back to the place where I first met the homeless man 5 years ago. I was astonished to find him still there. But more than this, I was surprised to see that he had not given up. He was running a small stall selling vegetables. I approached him again, just like the first time. But the difference this time was that I was not the least bit afraid. Well, I didn't ask anything about his health, as he seemed to be in a very positive mood. So now he is trying to make his stall and selling vegetables. One truth had been replaced by another. This is a framework for life and the basis of hope. And I have found that the political truth and the personal truth had been replaced by the objective truth. In short, he had found hope too, and a purpose in life. So now I'm trying to push myself and work harder academically. My purpose of standing here on the stage today is to let more people know that this is not a perfect world, and suffering and inequality are just commonplace. But I want us all to evaluate the personal and political truth that modern society cultivates around us with a critical eye. In the words of Rudyard Kipling, treat those two imposters just the same. There are many things to look forward to in 2024. And I'm not just talking about that new Marvel movie. Embrace blue sky thinking and be objective. In the words of Neil deGrasse Tyson, for healthier, more fulfilling lives, look at why you believe what you believe. Look for understanding so you can better recognize what is a personal, political, and objective truth. Stay mindful of your personal truth and keep them away from blurring the lines of the objective truth so you do not end up putting up roadblocks that hinder your progress or opportunities. Fate does not have a right to hold the key. Science does. Objective truth does. Science is not just a subject at school. It is a framework for life and the basis of hope. So be the science superhero. Thank you.